Windermere Pines, 1983, by Sandra Woodgrove. The road into Windermere Pines was as narrow and winding as Ethan remembered, flanked by snowbanks that pressed in like walls. Pines stood in silent vigil, their branches heavy with the weight of winter. The town didn't appear so much nestled in the woods as claimed by them, its streets and rooftops quietly absorbed by snowdrift and time. Ethan Crowley tightened his grip on the steering wheel, the rental's heater humming against the chill in his chest. He hadn't set foot in Windermere Pines in more than 3 decades, not since the summer he turned 15. Now in his 40s and nursing a bruised career, he had come back not for nostalgia, but for answers.
They still hang the same wooden sign, Ethan murmured to himself, eyes flicking to the arched "Welcome to Windermere Pines" plank overhead, hand-painted and edged in frost. Population 3,122. Some of them must remember.
He pulled into the town square, where brick storefronts lined the perimeter like faded postcards. Connor's Hardware, Jesse's Cafe, a barbershop that hadn't updated its signage since the 70s. The snow had been cleared in patches, leaving icy veins exposed on the tarmac. A group of teenagers clustered near the old movie theater marquee, all heavy coats and cell phones, unaware of the town's legacy underfoot. Beneath the square, somewhere below the ice and earth, lived the long shadow of Clara Holloway. Ethan parked near the municipal building. He opened the glove box and pulled out a thin, weathered folder. Inside were the few pages that had started this all again. A newspaper clipping from December 1983, a grainy photo of Crystal Lake lit by paper lanterns, and one shot from a disposable camera, unearthed 2 months ago in a Maine attic sale.
The photo had changed everything.
In the center of the image, a young girl in a red parka skated away from the camera, her arms outstretched like wings. Clara Holloway. The timestamp, December 17th, 1983. The night she disappeared. But what had caught Ethan's eye, and not the investigators back then, was what lingered in the shadows. A figure standing just off the tree line, too far to make out clearly, just tall enough, just close enough. Ethan tucked the photo back into the folder and stepped out into the cold. The air hit him hard, dry, sharp, real. He adjusted his scarf, shut the car door, and made his way toward the town archive. The municipal clerk, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and tighter lips, barely glanced up when he entered. "Help you?"
Ethan Crowley. I called yesterday, journalist, New England Post, looking into the Holloway disappearance. You said the town archive was open to researchers?
Ah, right, you're early. She slid a key across the counter. Rooms downstairs, watch your step, stairs are slick.
The archive room smelled of dust and cedar, its only light a single window near the ceiling, half obscured by snow. Metal filing cabinets lined the walls. A microfilm machine sat dormant in the corner, like a forgotten machine from another era. Ethan began with the police reports. He read slowly, making notes, witness statements, the search grid, temperature logs, even park ranger entries from that night. By mid-afternoon, he'd only confirmed what he already suspected. Clara Holloway had been last seen around 7:18 p.m., skating alone while her parents manned the cocoa booth. She was supposed to return to the main bonfire by 7:30. She never did. At 8:10, her mother began asking around. At 8:45, the first search began. At 9:02, the sheriff was notified. There were no screams reported, no signs of struggle, just absence. He flipped through the ranger logs. One entry caught his eye. 8:52 p.m., unattended boot tracks heading toward the western shore. Searched area, tracks lost near Pine Cluster, no sign of disturbance. The western shore. That's where the shadowy figure had stood in the photo.
So someone was there, someone who didn't come forward.
He stood and stretched, joints stiff from hours at the small metal desk. Outside, the sky had darkened. Flakes of new snow had begun to fall. That evening, he checked into the Maple Pines Inn, the only motel still open in the off-season. A small, pine-scented place with faded quilts and aging radiators. The clerk recognized his name.
Crowley? As in Richard and Miriam Crowley's boy? You used to come up summers, didn't you?
That's right, Ethan. Been a long time.
You were always with the Holloway twins. Clara and Nate, right? Shame what happened. Poor Miriam took it hard when you all stopped coming.
Yeah, she passed 5 years ago.
Ethan didn't mention his father or the reason they never came back after the winter of '83. He accepted the key, thanked her, and made his way to room 4. Later, as he sat at the desk with his notes, Ethan stared again at the photograph. He used a high-resolution scan now, adjusting contrast on his laptop. The figure remained indistinct, but something had changed. The angle, the posture. It wasn't just someone standing, it was someone looking toward Clara.
You were there, Ethan whispered. You saw her. Maybe you followed her.
He closed the laptop and scribbled a name at the top of the notepad. Nathan Holloway, Clara's twin brother, the only other person on the lake who would have known her every move that night. Tomorrow, Ethan would pay him a visit. The Holloway house stood at the edge of the forested ridge west of town, just past the old mill road. The mailbox still bore the family name in rusted steel letters, half buried by snow. A rickety fence wrapped the perimeter like a fading memory. Ethan parked on the gravel shoulder and approached slowly. The house was modest, 2 stories, weather-worn siding, a sagging porch. Wind whispered through the pine branches, carrying a silence he recognized, the kind that settled in places still grieving. He knocked twice. No response. A dog barked in the distance. He was about to knock again when the door opened partway, revealing a man in his early 50s, lean with silver threading his beard. His eyes were pale, unfocused, and ringed with fatigue.
Yeah? Nathan Holloway? My name's Ethan Crowley. I know who you are.
Nathan didn't open the door further. His voice had the flat cadence of someone who'd rehearsed silence.
I'd like to talk about Clara. I think I may have found something that was missed. You a cop? Journalist, New England Post. I grew up coming here summers. We used to play. That was a long time ago.
There was a long pause. Ethan didn't move.
I'm not here to blame anyone, Nathan. I'm here because I think there's a truth that never came out, and I believe you might be the only one who still wants it.
Nathan stared at him for several seconds. Then, without a word, he stepped back and opened the door. The hallway smelled of cedar and old smoke. Family photos lined one wall. Clara's face appeared more than once, on a sled, at a school recital, beside a boy identical to her, both with snow-covered noses. Ethan's throat tightened slightly. Nathan led him into a living room where a wood-burning stove crackled. A single armchair faced a small TV. A tray with a mug and pill bottles sat on the coffee table.
You can ask. Doesn't mean I'll answer. Fair enough.
Ethan sat on the worn sofa across from him, notebook open but pen unused for now.
Do you remember that night? The festival?
Nathan leaned back. His hands were restless, tapping, folding, unfolding.
Everyone remembers that night. We all have our version. Mine doesn't help. Were you with Clara that evening? Not really. She'd started doing her own thing by then. Skating, writing, talking to people I didn't know. Did she mention anyone she was meeting?
Nathan didn't answer immediately. His eyes drifted to the window.
She said something earlier that day. Asked if I'd seen a guy in a green coat hanging around the edge of the lake. I said no. She shrugged. Didn't seem worried. Clara never showed fear. Did she ever talk about being followed or feeling watched? Jesus. Is this what you're here to do? Dig up every word she said 40 years ago and make it mean something? I'm here to follow up on a photo.
Ethan opened the folder and handed it over. Nathan took the printout with shaking fingers. His jaw clenched as he examined it.
I've seen this. They showed it back then, couldn't make anything of it. But look here, this shape by the trees, just off the west bank. Did you notice that before?
Nathan stared at it longer. Then slowly, his expression changed.
Maybe. Who wore a green coat back then? Anyone stand out?
Nathan didn't answer.
Nathan, there was a guy, friend of our dad's, hung around too much. Talked to Clara like she was older than she was. Always at the lodge bar. Name was Vernon Laird.
Ethan's pulse ticked faster. Nathan nodded.
Did the police ever question him? Sheriff Palmer said he had an alibi, that he left town the next day. But you didn't believe that.
Nathan didn't respond, but his eyes said enough. After a moment, Ethan stood.
Thank you. I'll look into Vernon Laird. If you remember anything else. I won't.
Ethan left in silence. As he walked back to the car, snow began falling again, heavier this time. He stood for a moment by the mailbox, looking at the forest line. Who had Vernon Laird been? Why was his name buried in the background? Why hadn't it come up in the files? Ethan made a note in his phone. Next stop, Sheriff Palmer. Ask about Laird. Check lodge logs. Find out who protected whom. Whatever had happened that night, the town had sealed it tight under layers of snow, silence, and guilt. The elementary school hadn't changed much since 1983. A low brick building with aging trim, now partially modernized with security cameras and metal doors. But the playground, its old swing set warped with rust, the merry-go-round long removed, still whispered of earlier, simpler days. Ethan stood at the gate, watching children spill out onto the snow-dusted blacktop for recess. A few teachers in reflective vests monitored the chaos. One of them, a woman in a navy pea coat with a clipboard under one arm, looked up and spotted him. Her expression turned wary, then curious.
Can I help you?
Julia Brandt?
She hesitated, then nodded slowly.
Ethan Crowley, journalist. I called yesterday about Clara Holloway.
I remember you said you'd be brief.
And I will be. Just looking for memories, anything that wasn't in the original reports.
She studied him. Her hair was pulled back tightly, no makeup, her face weathered not by age but by profession. Years of patience etched into every glance.
Let's walk. Kids will be out here another 20 minutes.
They moved slowly along the fence line, away from listening ears.
I was 11 when Clara disappeared. We were in the same class. I was the quiet one. She wasn't.
She was outgoing.
Clara had charm, not the showy kind, just alive. She talked to teachers like she was their equal, asked questions no one else dared. She was curious, but I think she saw things she didn't know how to explain.
Like what?
Julia paused, watching a child fall and scramble back up.
There was a boy, older, maybe high school age. I saw her talking to him near the woods behind the gym. Once, maybe twice. I asked who he was. She said he was just someone who listened.
Do you remember what he looked like?
Tall, faded jacket, maybe a beanie. I never saw his face properly.
Ethan made a quick note.
Did Clara ever mention being followed or afraid?
She joked about it, said her mom was paranoid, always asking where she was going. I think she started keeping secrets that winter, writing more, hiding pages.
She kept a journal.
Yeah, she used to bring it to school, hide it under her tray, doodles, lists. Sometimes she'd write down license plate numbers. I remember that because it was strange for a 12-year-old.
Ethan's thoughts jumped to the journal he'd seen mentioned in the ranger station logs. An item recovered weeks after the disappearance, but deemed irrelevant. Pages too wet, handwriting smeared.
Did you ever read anything in it?
No, she was careful with it. I only glanced once. She'd written something like, "He says I'm safe if I don't tell." Then she scratched it out, hard.
Julia folded her arms, rubbing her elbows despite the coat.
I told my parents about that journal after she went missing. They didn't believe it meant anything, just girlish drama. But I remember her face when I asked about the boy. She didn't smile. She told me not to bring it up again.
Ethan felt a cold pit form in his chest.
Julia, do you think she knew the person who took her?
I think she trusted someone she shouldn't have.
They walked a few more paces in silence. A gust of wind scattered a layer of dry snow across the blacktop.
Thank you. That helps more than you know.
She deserved better than a cold file. If you find out what really happened, don't let the town bury it again.
Ethan returned to his car and sat for a long moment, reviewing his notes. Clara's journal, the unnamed older boy, the scratched-out line. He says I'm safe if I don't tell. Could that he be Vernon Laird or someone else? Ethan tapped the name into his laptop, Vernon Laird. Nothing recent. A few old bar receipts from the Lodge database dated December 1983. Then, a single news article from 1985. Local man Vernon Laird found dead in logging accident near Baxter Lake. No foul play suspected.
2 years later.
If Laird was involved, someone had silenced him or protected him. And if Clara's journal survived at all, it had to be somewhere the police never searched deeply, somewhere off-grid. Ethan remembered Julia's words. She hid pages, wrote things she scratched out. He needed to find that journal, and to do that, he needed to find Sheriff Palmer. Sheriff Gerald Palmer's house sat on the outskirts of town, past the derelict fire tower and over a slight hill that overlooked the valley. It was a squat, rectangular structure with a steep roof, wood shingled and worn gray by time. A metal plaque near the mailbox still read Palmer, retired sheriff in peeling gold letters. Ethan parked beside a rust-stained pickup and took in the property. Wind chimes jangled from the eaves. No footprints in the snow except one track to the side shed. Someone lived here, and not many came calling. He knocked firmly, 3 beats, then waited. The man who opened the door was older than Ethan expected. Mid-70s, heavy-set, shoulders rounded with the weight of years. His eyes were dull blue, hooded beneath thick brows.
Yeah? Gerald Palmer? I'm Ethan Crowley, journalist. I'm looking into the Holloway case from '83.
Palmer's expression soured instantly.
You're 30 years too late. Maybe, but you're not.
Palmer didn't move. Then, after a long beat, he stepped back and jerked his head inward.
5 minutes.
The living room was dimly lit, cluttered with hunting trophies and old certificates. A mantel lined with framed photographs, fishing trips, military honors, handshakes with governors long forgotten. No family photos.
Sit.
Ethan settled on the edge of a cracked leather armchair and flipped open his notebook.
Clara Holloway vanished December 17th, 1983. Search parties went out that night, continued for over 3 weeks. No body, no evidence. The case went cold. You here to recite the damn file to me? I'm here because new information has surfaced. Specifically, a photograph showing an unidentified figure near the lake that night. West Edge, possibly Vernon Laird.
Palmer's eyes didn't shift, but his fingers twitched.
Did you question Laird thoroughly back then? He had an alibi, confirmed by 2 witnesses at the lodge bar, both of whom worked under his brother's logging company, if I'm not mistaken.
Palmer didn't respond.
Did you ever consider a conflict of interest? You'd worked with the Laird family, hadn't you? I didn't protect Vernon, if that's what you're implying. Then explain this. Clara's brother remembered her asking about a man in a green coat, said he was hanging around the lake that week. Julia Brandt, her best friend, saw her talking to an older boy by the gym. Clara kept a journal. One page said, "He says I'm safe if I don't tell."
The words hung in the air like frost on a window pane.
We searched the area, we found that journal, waterlogged, illegible, and it never made it into the case file. I decided it wasn't relevant, no evidence to tie it to foul play. You decided.
Palmer sat forward, voice low.
You want to know the truth? Fine. I believe she ran off, that she hitched a ride with someone stupid, a kid playing rebel. I didn't think she was dead. But you knew the odds. 12 years old, Ice Lake, last seen alone, and you still filed it under voluntary disappearance. Why?
Palmer didn't answer right away. His face had changed, tightened, aged.
There were politics and pressure. Holloway's father ran the Merchants Association. They wanted a clean festival. You start accusing known names like Laird without proof. You drag the whole town through the mud. That's how you get recalled, or worse. So you made a call and let the trail die.
Palmer didn't deny it.
Case is closed, always has been. It won't be for long.
Ethan turned and walked out, heart pounding. Behind him, the door clicked shut, not slammed, just closed, like a chapter Windermere Pines never wanted to reread. Ethan sat in the car and jotted quick notes. Palmer, obstructed, knew about Laird, ignored journal. Leads journal recovery, lodge bar witnesses. Vernon's death in '85 equals accident? He scrolled his contacts and tapped a number.
Lydia, it's Ethan. Yeah, I'm back in Maine. I need a favor. Can you run a background sweep on a Vernon Laird? Born 1952, Maine logging family, died in 1985. Classified as accidental. Look for anything sealed or redacted.
As he hung up, his eyes caught movement across the field beyond Palmer's fence. A man in a gray jacket stood near the tree line, watching. Then he turned and disappeared into the woods. The trail to Crystal Lake curved through frost-bitten birches and pine, blanketed by fresh snowfall that muffled every footstep. The lake itself sat frozen under a waning sun, the ice thick, untouched. Lantern hooks still lined the edge from past festivals, though none were lit this time of year. Ethan paused near the ridge overlooking the clearing, the scene eerily similar to the photograph that had started this all. He pulled his scarf tighter. The sky was bruising to gray. He stepped down to the lake's edge, following the faintest remnants of a game trail. Beneath the fresh powder, the ground sloped unevenly, suggesting older structures now buried. One wooden bench remained, its metal bolts rusted. This was where the west edge met the trees, the spot where Clara Holloway had last been seen. He crouched, brushing away snow with his gloves. Ice crusted over roots and branches, and his breath misted in front of him. Nothing obvious, no markers, but the atmosphere, it was weighted.
Where were you going, Clara?
He took a few steps toward the tree line. That was where the figure had stood, just off the lake, partially obscured in the photo. From here, one could see the rink, the cocoa booth, the skating circle. It was the perfect vantage point, hidden but observant. Then a glint in the snow, barely there. Ethan knelt quickly and brushed aside the powder, something hard, dark, and tarnished. A small brass chain, broken at one end, partially lodged in frozen soil. He held it up to the light. It looked like part of a charm bracelet. The broken end had a sharp twist, as if torn or yanked. Attached was a small metal tag shaped like a skate, worn smooth but unmistakable.
Jesus.
He fumbled for a plastic bag in his satchel, sealed the charm, and marked the GPS coordinates in his notes. Could this have been Clara's? Had no one searched this far into the brush? A distant cracking sound echoed from across the lake, sharp, sudden. Ethan stood, scanned, nothing, just trees and silence. He turned his attention back to the forest line. There, among the birch trunks, stood a single wooden post, old, splintering, with a fragment of red cloth stuck to the bark beside it. High up, unnatural. He stepped closer. The post wasn't a marker, it was an old hitching pole, likely used for seasonal lighting or speakers. The cloth, when he pulled it free, was a scrap of nylon windbreaker, torn, fade forest green.
No way.
Vernon Laird had worn a green coat. Ethan documented everything, photos, measurements, coordinates.
No one can bury this anymore.
A sudden gust of wind kicked snow across the lake. Clouds rolled heavy above the trees. The forecast hadn't predicted snow until evening, but this was northern Maine. Weather rarely asked permission. Ethan turned back, retracing his steps. The trail was already filling in behind him. Halfway up the ridge, he paused. Something had shifted in the silence.
Hello?
No answer. Then a crunch behind him, a branch cracking under weight.
Who's there?
He spun around, but the woods were still. Ethan scanned the trees, the shadows between trunks. A familiar unease crawled up his spine, the feeling of being watched. Just like Nathan had said Clara described. He waited, listened. Then, reluctantly, he turned and hiked back toward the car. He kept one hand near the small folding knife in his pocket. The cold bit deeper. The silence stretched longer. By the time he reached the lot, the storm had begun. Fine powder fell sideways, carried by wind. The lake behind him vanished into a white sheet. Inside the vehicle, Ethan placed the bag charm beside his laptop and turned on the engine. The heater groaned to life. He stared ahead through the frosted windshield.
Okay, Clara, we're getting closer.
The Birch Point Lodge had once been Windermere Pines' only claim to tourism, a rustic two-story inn with an attached bar, built from red cedar and riverstone. In the winter of '83, it served as the social hub during the Winter Solace Festival. Now its shine had faded. The neon beer sign blinked intermittently, and the front desk was unmanned. Ethan stepped inside, the scent of pine cleaner and stale beer wafting from the hallway bar. A man hunched over the counter nursing a drink. Two others played cribbage near the stone fireplace. Country music played low from a dusty speaker.
Looking for Dean Maris or Hank Tulliver. Either of them still working around here?
The bartender, a woman in her 60s with short silver hair, looked up from polishing a glass.
Hank runs the plow routes now. Dean's here most afternoons fixing the water heaters. Why?
Ethan Crowley, journalist, reopening the Clara Holloway case.
The room changed. The cribbage game stopped. The man at the bar turned, just slightly. The bartender's eyes narrowed.
They were cleared.
I'm not here to accuse. I just want to hear their version. Heard you were sniffing around Palmer's.
Ethan turned. The man at the bar, mid-60s, tall, weather-beaten, set down his drink and stood.
Dean Maris. Ethan Crowley. Yeah, I remember. You used to fish off Holloway's dock. Always had your nose in a book.
Dean didn't offer a hand, but he gestured toward a booth in the corner.
Let's talk.
They slid into opposite seats. Ethan pulled out his notebook, but didn't open it yet.
In 1983, you told the sheriff Vernon Laird was at this bar the entire evening Clara disappeared. That true? He showed up around 7:45, had 2 drinks, played darts with Hank till 9, then left with some woman from Augusta. You remember the exact time? Was a long night. Festival packed the place. But the search for Clara started at 8:45. You're saying he was here during the window?
Dean didn't blink.
That's what we told Palmer. That's what happened. Who was the woman? The one he left with? Can't remember. Blonde, short coat, never saw her again. So no full name, no contact. Must be frustrating, digging into old ghosts.
Ethan leaned forward.
You gave an alibi that ended this investigation. Clara's journal suggested she feared someone. I found a chain near the lake, likely hers, and a torn piece of fabric matching a green coat like Laird's. Are you absolutely sure he was here the entire time?
Dean's jaw clenched. Behind him, the bartender listened.
We covered for him, all right?
Ethan didn't move. Dean glanced at the others. His voice dropped.
He said it was nothing, that she was upset, that she'd run off. We were young, loyal, thought the sheriff wanted it quiet anyway. So you knew he left early? About 8:30, said he was going to find her, set things right. We thought he meant her parents. But then he disappeared for 20 minutes, came back, said she wasn't there, had scratches on his hand. And you still vouched for him. He was our boss's brother. If we didn't, we'd have been out of work before New Year's.
Ethan opened his notebook now. The pen shook slightly in his hand.
Why come clean now? Because it's been 40 years and no one else has had the guts to say it. Because I can't look at my grandkids without wondering if we buried someone else's daughter.
The room stayed quiet. One of the cribbage players stood and walked out. The bartender said nothing.
What about Hank? He'll deny it, same as always, but he was there and he saw the scratches.
Ethan closed the notebook, stood.
I'll talk to him. Good luck.
By late afternoon, Ethan tracked Hank Tulliver to the town plow yard, an open-air depot with rows of salt bins and faded orange vehicles. Hank sat in the cab of one, engine running. Ethan rapped the door. Hank opened it halfway.
I'm working. I know you lied about Vernon Laird's alibi. Watch your mouth. Dean told me the truth. Said Vernon left the bar during the window. Clara vanished. Came back with scratches. You saw it.
Hank stared, jaw locked.
Sheriff told us to shut it. Said without a body, it was just speculation. And Vernon, he had dirt on people. Maybe Palmer, maybe others, who knows. You let a child's case go cold. I was 20, I was scared. You're 60 now.
The plow's engine revved. Hank slammed the door shut and drove off. Ethan stood in the fading light, breath clouding. The lodge alibi had crumbled. The sheriff had suppressed leads. Clara's charm lay in his pocket, and Vernon Laird, dead since 1985, was suddenly at the center of everything. If Windermere Pines had buried Clara once, it wouldn't bury her again. The old ranger station sat 1.5 miles beyond the Crystal Lake trailhead, surrounded by forest and slowly succumbing to disuse. Its roof sagged under layers of snow. Half its front deck had collapsed inward. What once served as a base for wildlife patrols and festival logistics now stood abandoned, just another structure swallowed by the woods. Ethan parked at the trail fork and walked in, boots crunching through deep snow. The temperature had dropped again. The light was thin and blue, branches bare and still. Windermere Pines had a way of muting sound, as though the trees themselves conspired to hold secrets. The station's outer door creaked open with a shove. Inside, a dusty filing cabinet, a splintered desk, maps peeling from the walls. A rusted heater in one corner, long dead. A faint scent of mildew clung to the place, though less than he expected.
Clara, what were you trying to tell us?
The logs he'd seen in the archive referenced a wet notebook turned in by a festival volunteer, stored in evidence but never followed up. No mention of its destruction. Ethan began at the cabinet. Most drawers were empty. The bottom one stuck, swollen by dampness. He forced it open slowly with a grunt. Inside, soggy maps, a warped ledger, a box labeled Lost Found, 1983 to 1985 in fading red marker. He lifted the lid, a scarf, a pair of mittens, a silver pin, a cracked Walkman, and at the bottom, wrapped in crumbling wax paper, a weather-stained composition book. He placed it gently on the desk. The cover was brittle, but the spine intact. Pages inside were stuck, discolored, the ink smeared in places, but many were still legible.
Come on, be in here.
He turned to a page about halfway through, pencil markings, childish block letters. December 11th, the man with the green coat saw me again. I didn't wave this time. December 12th, he said my writing was good, said he wouldn't tell Mom I was out if I didn't tell her he saw me. December 14, Nate told me not to talk to him, but he listens. He says I'm brave. He gave me gum. I think he's lonely. Ethan leaned in. The next page was worse, blotched, torn, but a fragment survived. He said secrets are safer when they stay cold. Said I'm his winter girl. He stopped reading. The words were chilling, not because of their literal meaning, but because of their emotional ambiguity. Clara, 12 years old, manipulated, perhaps groomed.
She tried to say it, and no one listened.
He photographed the pages, careful not to damage them. Then he placed the book into a waterproof zip pouch from his satchel and sealed it. Ethan stood in the center of the station, listening. Snow tapped against the window like soft fingernails. No footsteps, no voices, just the forest breathing around him. He walked outside and locked the door behind him with the rusted latch. As he turned toward the trail, he noticed something strange in the snow. A set of fresh boot prints, coming from the tree line, not his. They hadn't been there before. Too crisp, too shallow to be old. They stopped 10 feet from the building, then vanished. Whoever had come had left, watching, but not approaching.
Still here.
He moved quickly down the trail, glancing back once. The prints were already softening in the wind, but their shape lingered in his mind. Heavy soles, deep heel. This wasn't random. Someone was tracking him. Back in his motel room, Ethan laid the journal fragments out under a portable lamp. He transcribed each entry carefully, then emailed a scan to Lydia, his contact in Boston, with a note.
Clara Holloway's original journal, evidence of grooming, possibly linked to Vernon Laird, stored off record since '83, need forensic recovery on water-damaged pages.
He sat back in the chair, rubbing his eyes. Clara had done everything she could to leave a trail. She had written, trusted others, observed. And when she disappeared, the town ignored her in favor of preservation. No more. The window in Clara Holloway's bedroom had frosted over by morning, laced with delicate ice veins that shimmered when the light hit them. She drew her finger down the center and pressed her nose to the glass. Outside, snow covered the world like frosting, untouched, pure, and perfect. Finally, festival day had arrived. She slipped from under her quilt and padded barefoot across the hardwood floor. The air bit at her toes, but she didn't mind. Downstairs, her mom was already boiling cocoa. She could smell cinnamon and wood smoke and something sweet, maybe the nutmeg muffins she helped make last night. In the kitchen, Nate was already bundled in 2 layers of everything, trying to stuff a granola bar into his mouth without removing his scarf.
You look like a fat snowman.
Better than freezing my ass off.
I'm telling Mom. If I hear another swear word, both of you will be helping me pour cocoa instead of skating.
Clara grinned and plopped into the chair across from Nate. She loved the festival. The lights, the skaters, the food stalls. Everyone happy, everyone out late. It made the town feel like a storybook, like nothing bad could ever happen. Except for the strange feeling that had crept in lately. The one she hadn't told Nate about. Not really. Not everything. She saw the man in the green coat again yesterday, near the gym, behind the loading dock. He wasn't doing anything wrong, just leaning on the railing, sipping coffee. He didn't look scary. He smiled at her. He always smiled. And when she passed, he said,
You have eyes like flint, writers usually do.
She never told him she wrote things, but she did, in her notebook, every day. December 16th, he says I'm brave, but I felt my stomach twist today. Maybe brave and scared live close together. She tucked the notebook into the secret zip in her coat lining before breakfast, just in case. Today felt important, big, like the last page in a story before something changes. Later that morning, while her parents set up their booth by the skating tent, Clara wandered along the outer rink. She liked the cold air on her cheeks, the bite of it. It reminded her she was alive. The lake looked glassy and perfect. Somewhere near the tree line, she spotted the man again. Further back this time, just watching. Not creepy, just still. She hesitated, then wept. He didn't wave back. By noon, the festival was in full swing. Clara skated for nearly an hour, then sat with Nate to eat kettle corn and hot dogs. He bragged about racing the junior hockey boys later. She said she might go find Julia, but she didn't. Instead, she took a slow lap alone. Past the cocoa stalls, past the warming tents, past the exact spot she wasn't supposed to go, near the trees where the lanterns stopped. He was there again, closer now, just where the snow met the roots.
You skate like someone trying to remember a dream.
Clara stopped. Her hands felt cold inside her mittens.
I should get back.
Your mom's busy. You've got 5 minutes.
She hesitated. He knelt down and pulled something from his pocket, a foil-wrapped stick of cinnamon gum.
You like this one, don't you?
She did, but she had never told him that. She took a step back.
How do you know that?
The man smiled, and for the first time, it didn't look warm.
You mentioned it a long time ago. Don't be dramatic.
Her stomach flipped. She turned quickly.
I really have to go.
She moved fast across the ice toward the booths, toward people, toward light. The wind cut at her eyes. She didn't look back. That night, Clara Holloway would disappear after her last solo lap around Crystal Lake. Somewhere near the edge of the trees, where footprints blur and lanterns fade, her trail would end. But before she vanished, she left her story in pencil. And for 40 winters, the town refused to read it. The address was tucked into a wooded side road off County Route 14, just a mile from where the Laird logging operations had once run. The house wasn't much more than a cabin, square, single-story, aluminum siding half-patched with plywood. A Ford hatchback sat in the snow, tires dusted with salt. Ethan parked, shut off the engine, and checked the name again. Diana Laird, Vernon's only sibling. Last seen in town the week after the accident in '85, then gone. According to Lydia's background pull, she'd moved between Portland and Bangor, changed jobs 6 times, never married. He climbed the path to the door and knocked. Footsteps, then a woman's voice behind the wood, steady, firm.
If you're selling anything, I'm not interested.
Not selling. I'm Ethan Crowley, journalist. I'm writing about Clara Holloway.
The door opened slowly. She looked to be in her early 60s, short salt and ash hair pulled tight at the nape, face drawn but alert. No makeup, no softness.
I know who you are. The motel clerk told me someone was asking about Vernon.
I was hoping you'd talk to me.
Diana stepped aside without a word. Inside, the house was plain, clean but worn. A kettle steamed quietly on the stove.
Say what you need to say.
I believe your brother was involved in Clara Holloway's disappearance. I believe the town protected him. I also believe you might be the only person who knows what he was really like.
Diana didn't move. Then she walked to the kettle, poured water into 2 mugs, and slid one across the table.
I haven't said his name out loud in almost 20 years.
You lived with him right up until he died.
Yeah. After our dad passed, I came back to help with the logging accounts. Vernon handled operations. I kept the books.
She sat down. Her hands were pale and dry, fingers wrapped tightly around the mug.
Vernon wasn't always like that. He was loud, sure, confident. But when he came back from the army in '75, something had shifted. He'd wake up screaming some nights, say things didn't feel real.
They
didn't call it that back then. Said he was moody. But I knew better. He'd drink, sit in the dark for hours, go walking through the woods without saying a word.
Ethan opened his notebook slowly.
Did he ever talk about the Holloways, about Clara?
She looked away, then back.
He came home late that night. After the festival, I asked where he'd been. His jacket was wet. He had a scratch on his neck.
What did he say?
He said he made a mistake, that he didn't mean for it to happen, that he was trying to fix something. I didn't understand then. I do now.
She pushed her mug aside.
He was obsessed with that girl. Said she reminded him of someone. I think she was kind to him, and he twisted that into something else.
Did you tell anyone?
Who would have listened? Sheriff Palmer? He was at our house every other week for drinks. Vernon made them all money.
Ethan reached into his bag and placed a plastic pouch on the table. Inside, the journal, Clara's original. The page marked in pencil, he says secrets are safer when they stay cold, said I'm his winter girl. Diana read it in silence.
Oh my God.
She pushed it back gently, as if it were sacred.
I'm sorry. I should have stopped him. I should have told someone.
You still can.
She nodded.
If I give you my statement, if I confirm what I saw and what he said, will it matter?
Yes, it will matter.
She stood and walked toward a locked drawer, pulled out a small wooden box. Inside, an old cassette tape marked VL, Dissing 83.
He recorded things, conversations. I kept this, I don't know why, but you should have it.
Back in the car, Ethan slid the tape into a digital converter and pressed play. The static cleared, and then...
I saw her again. She smiled. I told her it wasn't her fault, that I would take care of everything. She didn't scream, not right away.
It wasn't a confession, but it was close, and it was time to confront the man who buried it all. The snow had stopped by morning, leaving a world glazed in ice and silence. Ethan parked across from the sheriff's old house again, same sagging porch, same wind chimes rattling faintly in the breeze, but this time his hands didn't shake. He climbed the steps and knocked.
You again?
Sheriff Palmer looked older than before, or maybe the light just hit him differently now.
You should sit down.
Palmer didn't move.
I found Clara's journal. I found her charm bracelet. I've got recorded audio from Vernon Laird the night she disappeared, and I have a sworn statement from his sister.
Palmer said nothing, his jaw set like ice.
You buried this, lied in your report, protected your friends. You think you know what it was like back then? I know exactly what it was like, because I've been in every damn room you walk through, and I listened. Clara Holloway was 12. She trusted the wrong man, and this town let him vanish into the woods like she never existed.
Palmer opened the screen door slowly. Ethan didn't move.
You going to the DA? Yes, first thing, you'll be named, not as a suspect, but as the man who let a girl disappear on his watch and did nothing.
Palmer exhaled. For the first time, his eyes dropped.
I just didn't want to ruin anyone else's life, and in doing so, you let hers end.
Ethan turned and walked down the steps, snow creaking under his boots. He didn't look back. The county district attorney's office sat in a boxy gray building on the edge of Bangor. Ethan's meeting took just under an hour. He handed over Clara's journal fragments, the charm bracelet, photographs of the torn green coat scrap, Dean Maris's written admission, Diana Laird's signed affidavit, and the audio recording. The assistant DA didn't say much, but she listened. An investigation was formally reopened. Though Vernon Laird was dead, the press coverage alone would shake Windermere Pines. Statements would be re-examined, decisions questioned, and though it was too late for charges, it was not too late for truth. 3 days later, Ethan stood near the edge of Crystal Lake. The town had lit the lanterns for the first time in years. Children skated beneath them, their laughter cutting across the cold. Families sipped cocoa. An acoustic guitar played from the bandstand. He didn't go to the bonfire. He stayed near the trees, looking out over the place where Clara had once stood, where the ice had cracked and no one noticed. Beside him, Julia Brandt approached in a long red coat.
Did you get what you came for?
Not exactly, but I got what she deserved.
They stood in silence a while. Then Julia pulled something from her coat pocket, a single white lantern, battery-powered.
They used to give these to the kids before their final lap. Clara had one.
She placed it on the snowbank, turned it on. It glowed faintly, flickering in the breeze. It wasn't justice, but it was memory. And this time, the town was watching. The end. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, ring the bell, and tell your friends about my listening library.